I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Syya Yasotornrat. Syya is the co-founder of Innovation Media Enterprises. But not only that, she has many hats. She is a consultant, storytelling advocate, and a podcast strategist. She knows that people tell their stories nowadays through podcasts. I want to know her story and how she can encourage us to tell our story. Join me today in the conversation with Syya Yasotornrat. I'm Brian V, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Syya Yasotornrat. Good evening, young lady.
Good morning, good sir.
Good, sir. Yes, I spoke with someone the other day, maybe even just yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, I love being called young man." I go, "People like being called. It's not implying that we're older. It's just nice to know." Thank you for coming on here. And would you be able to give me a little introduction about yourself? And then I'm going to take you back.
Sure. Okay, so when I introduce myself as my current state of Sia-ness of it all?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I am the co-founder of Innovation Media Enterprises and also the Dallas co-chair of Global Leaders Organization and also co-host of Innovation Calling podcast and the Afterglow live podcast. So I'm part of a lot of stuff. And if you really want to go there, it hasn't been launched quite yet, is co-host of How Soon Was Now. It's an alternative 80s and 90s podcast. So I'm
So you're
kind of into the podcast world.
so you're not busy at all.
Is busyness an issue when you're doing what you love to do?
Well, that's what we're going to get into. Sia, can you tell me and maybe take us back into your very first job? Nothing to do, I mean, maybe it had something to do with technology. Most people I ask this question of, it's like puppet shows and lemonade stands or diving for golf balls or something. But what was your very first job that you did maybe as a teenager?
So funny thing, and I've debated to put it on my LinkedIn for fun, just because at this point, who cares? Uh, I for 30 days I worked at a frozen yogurt shop in Southern California, and it wasn't even like and for those from Southern California, you'll know the chain Penguins. I didn't even work at Penguins. I worked at a knockoff place where you actually poured it. The people would pour it themselves,
Hmm.
and all I did was literally stand at the cashier, weigh their yogurt, and then take money and move on in life. That was my first job for 30 days.
How old were you, did you say?
16.
What got you out of the house to work at 16?
Um, I've always had a very independent streak. My father is a self-made man. He came over from Thailand in the 50s and was a strawberry picker, worked his way out of the field and ended up getting his bachelor's and master's at, oh, I always get this wrong. I think
Hmm.
it's Oregon State, whoever is the Ducks,
Hmm.
University of
Oregon
Oregon.
Ducks, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And he ended up getting his master's there and ended up working in the aerospace industry and was part of the first four launches of the space shuttle. So my dad was extraordinarily brilliant and bright and talk about why we work. Maybe he should be the better person to talk to.
Well, I don't know if he's the better person, but it is quite interesting from picking strawberries to launching
He,
spaceships.
yep, his group at Rockwell was a contract, and yeah, he was part of the group that was part of that initial power supply to just get the launched. What's that? When you literally hit the ignition
Hmm.
button, like
Hmm.
the fire goes out.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
his little spot of project. Yeah,
Three,
crazy.
2, 1, liftoff.
And that trigger point that was his group's responsibility.
So at 16, working at the yoga, and I think there's a franchise now. You were saying that it was kind of a knockoff, but that's a pretty popular franchise now. Something different. I'm not sure the name of it, where you can just go pour your own and then you weigh it at the end. It's a good idea because you mix and match. What did you
Yep.
learn from those 30 days?
Oh,
You hate
um,
yogurt?
well, I love yogurt, except I don't love yogurt machines because I had to
Hmm.
wipe that down.
Yeah.
I find people are extraordinarily inconsiderate, um, especially tired parents,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
let their kids do whatever they want. I'm a bit of a germaphobe as a result of it. I'll just leave it at that. It's like you should not
It
have a
prepared you
toddler.
for 2020 though.
Oh, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I have been long prepared for this epidemic, like this.
Hmm.
Yes, or pandemic, I should say. Yeah.
So did you leave that
Oh, sorry.
job or did you
Yes.
get fired from that job?
If I probably stayed another 30 days, I probably would have gotten fired.
Hmm.
I was playing Nirvana like loudly in the store, and every now and then, like the owner would walk in. Mind you, I was 6 year old by myself in a store. I don't even know if that's legal.
They trusted you.
Um, I guess. But my buddy, his father was a VP over at Disneyland, and there was a job opening for this new restaurant concept, and so I interviewed for it and got in, and we were the literally pilot restaurant for a huge concept that's popular now, which is called Goofy's Kitchen, which is about the character dining experience where the characters would go from table to table and you could eat and then see Mickey, or not, wouldn't be Mickey Mouse, but you would see Minnie Mouse,
Hmm.
Goofy, all the characters literally go from table to table.
And you
So
started with the pilot of it.
we were originally called Chef's Kitchen. And then when they were piloting it, they called us Goofies. And then when it was successful, then it's everywhere within all the Disney kingdoms now.
How long did you stay with the restaurant franchise?
So it wasn't a franchise; it was a Disney-owned organization. So I was a
Hmm.
cast member.
Okay.
So I was there for 6.5 years and worked as a hostess as well as a waitress there, if you will. And then I also, under the Disney University, I was a resort trainer. So I would very, very, very difficult job of welcoming orientation, new hires, and saying, "Welcome to the Disney family." And then I would walk them through around the Disneyland Hotel and show them the ropes of the area and stuff.
How difficult? I think this is interesting because, as a cast, what was the title? Cast member?
Cast member, because it's all a
So
show.
it's
We're all a
everything is
show.
show, even from the garbage cleaner to everything. Everyone would be the cast member because you're
Yes.
part of the experience.
Absolutely. And that's what I learned. If anything, I consider the yogurt place as a joke. That one was more of the have patience with people.
Hmm.
Uh, but at Disney, I learned why you want to have patience with people. And I think there's a big difference. There's always a why on what motivates people's emotions. And to me, I realized very quickly, and Disney was amazing for this, which is you've got families that are spending their entire life, vacation savings, if you will.
Once in a
Take
lifetime opportunity for them too. Yeah.
Yep. And so if this is their one investment that they're going to do for their kids, you've got to give them the best experience because it may be their only that they'll ever get. So if you're rude to them, there's a saying, and I use it today, which is it's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel.
Hmm.
That's what they remember. And that's why Disney has lasted as long as it has and why people love Disney and why the brand is always top rated.
Hmm. Worldwide. How difficult was it? I mean, I worked in the hotel industry, and the hotel industry has a similar pressure, but probably, I mean, nothing probably compares to Disney in that sense, especially for younger people. How difficult was it to be, as I say, be on your A game all the time in your job? Is that a challenge?
It is. I think that's where I probably, thank goodness I'm an extrovert, but I think I really developed my coffee addiction real fast working at Disney. It is hard to stay
Hi.
up.
Yeah.
It is hard to, especially when you're in restaurants, right? There's hospitality and then there's food and beverage. And food and beverage, oftentimes you're the barrier for someone that has low blood sugar or they've had a really trying day. And look, Disney's not cheap. So
I was just thinking that. And they have to spend $20 for a burger.
yes. And this is, back when I worked in the 90s. Yes, I'm dating myself. I mean, these were like $30 dinners for a buffet that they
Hmm.
were charging.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I, yeah, it was,
And you
there's
can't
some,
say no because you have to go kilometers to get outside of it, or miles, I guess.
yeah, no, it was, I mean, we've done so many magical things for families.
Hmm.
I just love it. So yeah, no, Disney, I have nothing to complain about. Although I do jokingly say, you know, Disney's the happiest place on earth, until you work there.
Yeah,
But
except
it
for the
is,
employees.
well, we'd always say, look, people, we signed up to work for a rat. So what's going to go? What are you doing here?
That's funny. So this brings you into your 20s. When did you start to think about your career? Were you even thinking entertainment? Because you started at 17 or so, and then thinking into maybe if college was on the horizon. What were you starting to think in your teen years?
Yeah, so I think like most kids, I wanted to I wanted to go to medicine. I wanted to, I thought at the time, of course, I could be a doctor because everyone else wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or
Hmm.
whatever. And initially, I had that desire. My roommates in college, uh, they were part of the UC Riverside biomed program, and it was extraordinarily intense. Where it's this program where if you get accepted, you would get in. If you finish the program in the top like percentage, then you
Hmm.
got accepted into UCLA medical school. I mean, it was very competitive, where people were literally like sabotaging like each other's labs. It was pretty hardcore. I did not last very long in that program, but I had friends that did, and we had the one weird story, if I may.
Yeah, you
Uh,
may.
we had the opportunity. This is where I'm dating myself, but I'm just going to say it.
You keep
My
saying dating yourself. I'm sure you're not older than me, so then you're making me feel like I'm very old. So you're fine with
Okay,
your dating.
okay, because what I'm about to say, I think most people, unless you're my age, probably wouldn't know what's going on. But you might have heard of the O.J. Simpson trial. Well,
Yeah,
so
a few people have.
few people have. So
I
my
remember in
roommate,
high school, if that dates me, I think it was a high school party. We just sat around and watched OJ running in his Bronco.
yeah, well, I'm in college, so I'm a little bit older than you. So,
Well,
so my girlfriend, her brother worked at the LA County Coroner's office.
hmm.
At the teaching facility. So she asked me, she goes, "Hey, they're about to do the autopsy. You're interested?" I couldn't get the shift off at Disney, so I couldn't go. So my girlfriend ended up going, and she was able to see part of it. That's a
The
story for you.
the reason to get into biomed, did any of that, or did it even start earlier as your father was progressing in his career, getting a master's, bachelor's, master's, and did you feel that, oh, look at my dad, look how
Yeah.
well he's doing? Was there some sort of kindling from that side as well?
I think it was respect. I mean, he came from nothing, didn't speak the language. He's a foreigner, right? And he had to overcome so much. And, he came in the 50s. And so by the time he was in college and getting his master's, early 60s. So you can imagine it was a very different time in America. There was a lot of different, prejudices that, obviously I'm sure has experienced.
Hmm.
Um, and I just didn't want to let him down. Like for him to overcome that without any help, I kind of took on that personality and persona as well. Of look, people have it worse than I do and did. And I did grow up well. Thank goodness my father gave me a great upbringing. I had never had want in life, and it was such a great motivator because no one's perfect. And I won't say my father's a perfect parent, but you know what? He was darned close to making me understand that the world doesn't owe me anything, and I have to be accountable for my own decisions and results. And I think that's always driven me. It's always been part of me. I don't know if I was born into it or maybe I just saw it and observed it and kind of got it. I don't know. That nature nurture. I
It's
don't
a
know.
very valuable lesson to learn, even at a young age, or especially at a young age. After your divergence from biomed, where did you go? What did you do?
I took a hiatus. Actually, no, I didn't take a hiatus at that point. So I realized very quickly that wasn't for me. I didn't have the discipline. I'm sorry, I just don't. To myself. I'm saying
Hmm.
sorry to myself, not to you. I realized in my arrogance, I thought I had that discipline, and it took a lot of maturity to accept I didn't. I ended up dropping out of that program, and I ended up dropping out of that program, and um, apologize. Thought I muted myself there. I ended up going into a history degree because I could get straight A's, and I decided I just need to get done with college.
Okay, you wanted to get it finished with.
Um, so I actually took a 3-year hiatus to grow up and mature. And when I came back, I actually transferred into San Francisco State University and finishing off my degree. Um,
So, not for dating wise, but just age wise. This is 25, 26, 27, 28, around
I
those.
was when I left, I was 20. Took
When you
3 years off at
20 to
23.
23, yeah, 24.
Yeah, so 20 to 23 or so, I was growing up,
I
and
think
then
it's a valuable I think it's a valuable lesson, right? Regardless of what you did and where you went, but the idea of having I took a year after failing my first year. So I was like, okay, maybe not. Take a year off and figure out. And then I think the world kind of kicked me and said, I better go back to school or I'll be doing what I was doing at the time. But it's a valuable lesson to know that you don't have to rush into it because, I mean, you said people were taking biomed. Okay, well, maybe I can go do that or rush into university right away when you're not ready. I mean, one, it's money, but two, if at the end of it you're not even any more clear on what you're doing, then it's a big waste of your time.
absolutely. I actually, because of my own pain points in growing up and experience, I tell all my nieces and nephews, absolutely. I don't know if you hear my dog. I apologize. I told my nieces and nephews, if you're not ready and you don't know exactly what you want to grow, do when you grow up, if you will, after high school, take a sabbatical, take a year off. In England, they call it a gap year. Take a
Mm-hmm.
gap year and just find yourself, or go to a junior college where just get your general ed done. It's cheaper, first off,
Yeah,
and maybe college isn't for you. And that's where I encourage everyone, don't follow the path just because you think you're supposed to. Follow the path
yeah,
because it's right for you.
yeah. You're absolutely right. There's because there is that idea, the push of universities not important and people shouldn't go. I wouldn't go
Yeah.
that far, but it's just not important for everyone. And we know that because not everyone goes. But if you're pressured or you have that option and you're just going because it seems where the crowd is taking you, really stop with the current that's going against you. Take a minute, assess if this is right for you at all, or just you need 1 year, 1 semester, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. There's really, I know someone that did it when they went back to school when they were 70. So 50, 60 years, right?
Well, I think it's a value thing. If you don't value the education that you're receiving, you're never going to appreciate it. You're never going to actually absorb what you need to in order to take yourself to that next level. Right. And that's maturity, maybe, or just maybe, again, going back to value.
And and unfortunately, but I think the way the world works too is there's value in just that piece of paper, even if you're not even sure what the value is, because you might be able to use it somewhere down the road, right? And like, did you become a? I wouldn't say it's the any sort of reason to go to university, but even if you're uncertain and you have no other choices, to go to university is not a bad thing, an alternative to do. Because for me, I took a degree, switched it, took a time off, started again, finished, and then I didn't jump into business because that's what I took. And but that degree got me a job teaching English overseas.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm
You can
totally catching.
disagree. You can
I'm catching
disagree.
what you're pitching. I'm catching what you're
Did you
pitching.
become a history teacher?
No. So, and that's the crazy part. And that's where maybe my side of it is, to me, that piece of paper just means you know how to follow through on a commitment. That's all.
Hmm.
Whether you absorbed any of it means nothing to me. Um, me
Oh, me too. I agree with that.
now there are some disciplines you actually have to go to college. I mean, I'm sorry, you
Hmm.
have to go to college if you want to
Doctor.
be a doctor, for
Yeah.
example, right? You have to. um if you're going to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, you're going to be understanding what's going on, this
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I would
Hmm.
like to think you're studying something somewhere and not just reading Google, Wikipedia somewhere. Okay, so yeah, no, absolutely. But I think there's value in apprenticeship, hands on. and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and that's being a medical doctor. That's what it is, right?
That's
You
where
have
they
to get the
learn.
base
Yeah.
knowledge,
Mm.
and then there's it's almost like mechanics of the human body, right? And I've always been an advocate of, like, I can't fix my car, and there's a premium I'm willing to pay for that skill set.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. No,
but society may or may not value it.
it comes in many forms, I wouldn't even say. And I actually have a question at the near the end about your value of education, because I don't think that it only comes in one package. There's hands-on, there's life experiences, there's all forms of uh, education that we all need. A lot of people push and say, well, I mean, there's the worst attitude is I can't learn anything from anyone. And people do have that. But you need people, you need teachers, whether they're bona fide teachers or they're just, a father who's going to teach you a lesson that you'll be wise to learn. After your history degree, where did that take you?
Oh, sure. And I feel like I'm like talking so much, but yeah, so after I got my degree in history at San Francisco State, um I what did I do? Oh my gosh, you're making me go back in time.
Yeah,
Brian, I don't know if I like this conversation. I'm kidding. No.
it's the best conversation to show that where you are today was not straight.
It wasn't.
And the bumps, and as you and I spoke at the beginning, it's like the bumps and the bruises that you get to take you where you are, and then you're finding you're loving what you're doing. So how did you get there?
It's okay. It's great that you mentioned that. So I answered an ad. I graduated, had no clue.
Hmm.
I actually broke up with a boyfriend and didn't know what was going to happen. I was supposed to not be broken up with that boyfriend, and we were supposed to go back to New York together.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was extraordinarily lost. I probably was at the lowest point of my life. Oh wait, if I could say one more thing, I
Absolutely.
left. When I went to get my degree in history, I left um, Southern California, sight unseen, moved to San Francisco with my best friend, and that was a leap of faith. I didn't have a job. I enrolled in San Francisco State to finish my degree. I was 3 year hiatus. I needed to get off my you know what and get a degree. I just knew I didn't need to get it done. I had been about 22, 23 at that point, and I had $50 to my name in 1998, moving to the Bay Area. Which,
fifty
if you know
dollars in your
anything,
name at any time is really not much to speak of, right?
no, and how and why I thought that was a good idea. I I was expecting like some money, my vacation time from Disney, but look, people, no, no, I don't. Would I make that decision now? Hell no. But at the
Right.
time, I was full of optimism, and you know what? I think that's what made me happy. That's what made it happen.
Mhm.
$50 to my name. Moved in June 1998, which apparently is not summertime in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Just so you know, um, froze to death that first night in the apartment, but found a job waiting tables,
Yeah.
and then got my degree. Worked through waiting tables to get it, and then when I graduated, was at another low in my life where it wasn't where I thought I would be, and answered an ad to be a technical recruiter in downtown San Francisco, and that's what got me into the technology world.
Technology part of it.
And so I was recruiting for a lot of great talent. And one of my old colleagues recruited me to a company called Sonic Wall, which is a network security company. And I went. And that's what started and launched the next phase of my life, which is technology sales.
So now that you had this newfound um, spark in your life rather than the downs, not that you didn't have any low points from there on out, but what did you really think about this technology? Before you're in customer service, you're the face of Disney,
I
now
wouldn't
you're
call
in
that.
technology. You're in technology, which is, behind the scenes and promoting technology. Were you optimistic about this new role that you were going to play, or were you okay? Like,
Absolutely. Are you kidding? I was in the .com bubble,
yeah,
bubble number one, right? In San Francisco. We were right there in the thick of it. I was placing people at these companies, like Google and stuff. I mean, this was like crazy before they blew up, right?
yeah.
So yeah, no, I was in the thick of it, and that's the exciting part of it, right? Um, so I was in sales
Yeah.
for inside sales, and
Mhm.
that's basically a call center. And from there, I started understanding the technology and the value of network security back in the early 2000s. And that's what got me excited because I knew the future of digital, future technology was going to have to rely on network security. And so I knew how to job security to know that too. So
So how did you get into your present role with being the co-founder of Innovation Media Enterprises?
yeah, so I ended up getting recruited by Hewlett Packard, which is now a Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So as part of the data center side of the house, um, HP and Sonicel had a relationship back then, and so I got recruited over. I had worked at HP for almost 9, 10 years, and in 2018, my job was considered redundant, and I had the option to look around, and I just lost the passion. That's one big thing that's important to me is if I don't believe in what I'm selling or representing,
Hmm.
there's no fire or spark there. So I opted to take the package, and I'm not gonna lie, I went on a vacation spree and traveled the world for a good year and a half. And then I realized I had champagne tastes on a zero income budget and realized I needed to do something with myself. And instead of going back to corporate America, which I just kind of didn't, I kind of lost the luster for it,
Hmm.
started Innovation Media Enterprises, which is a podcast production strategy company.
Co-founder, you're a co-founder with this, and how do you define your role now besides a co-founder? What is it you do? I mean, COVID might have changed a couple of things for you, but what is it that you do in the run of a week or in the run of a day?
Oh, if anything, I'm definitely still doing what I always do well. And I think that's my partner and I balance each other out extraordinarily well. Her name is Erin Greger, by the way, who's beyond amazing. She was actually the entrepreneur. And she was the one that encouraged me over and over again to look at entrepreneurship as an alternative to working for corporate America. And so she's been a successful entrepreneur and has had successful exits. She knows it. She knows how to be an entrepreneur. She knows what the paperwork side of it, the business side. I am the sales, marketing, the face, if you will, the loudmouth. I call it. I'm the loudspeaker of our organization.
What is something that brings you satisfaction in your job that you're doing, in your roles that you have as a consultant, storytelling advocate, and even the strategist for podcasters?
Yeah, absolutely. So we focus on businesses. And because of my background in technology, we do focus on our clients being from the tech world. So there is a challenge of getting out of speeds and feeds, getting out of the cursory stuff. I help brands understand that there's a better depth, there's emotion to who and what they are that will resonate and connect in a podcast format for their prospects and clients. Especially with the pandemic now that what we're seeing is you've got a sales force here that may or may not be able to see their clients right now. How are you going to differentiate yourself versus all the Zoom meetings that are out there? People are zoomed out, right? So how else can you connect when you can't physically be in the same room with them? And I think, and I firmly believe, and I've seen it, podcasts work because what podcasts do is they connect you in a different way, on a different level, and such that when there is a time for business to be had, people work with people they like and trust. You can't do it in an ad. Podcasts will do that for you in the long term.
I don't know if you'd call it your tagline, but everyone has a story to tell. Do it with a podcast. So my question of what brings you satisfaction, would it align with your tagline and finding these stories of these people in their podcasts and some of those stories that might bring you inspiration in your work?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's that satisfaction of knowing that maybe you're bringing a new story, a new voice to the forefront that maybe people didn't even think would be interesting to someone. There's a lock for every key, right? So yeah, that satisfaction of knowing that I'm sharing, I'm helping someone to get them to share their story. That's very satisfying to me. Absolutely.
Sia, in the many hats that you wear and the roles that you have in your business and some of the other things you're doing, what would you like people to understand so they can understand maybe the value you're bringing to the podcast world or to hearers and listeners? But if there's one thing that they could understand about you so they can appreciate your role or you in the work that you're bringing.
Hmm. Wow, that's a tough one for me. It's funny. I like to bring out and draw people out to share themselves. And yet at the same time, when you want me to dig deep into myself, I struggle with it, right? Um, really,
You're doing very well, by the way.
thank you. Thank you. You know, oh wow. Okay.
What would you like
What's your
someone to know about Sia?
I know it's crazy. Well, I'm not crazy, despite what everyone says.
Yeah.
I just, I love life. I love people, and I love to see success. I love to see people be successful, especially if I had like an iota of help to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about, and I say this, all ships rise with the tide.
Yeah.
That's why I think I'm such an advocate for podcasters. Uh, Even if, like, I was actually talking to another podcast editor, and the guy's like, we're competitors, right? And I'm like, not really. There's so much to be
Yeah.
had. There's so much business to be done. Why wouldn't I cheer you on to success? There's tons of other, podcast studios out there that do it differently or do more or do less or whatever. To me, as long as we are a great community and we are supporting one another, there's enough business to be had. And I love that. I'm like, I genuinely want other people to be successful because when they are, I know I'm going to be. And that's something about me that sometimes I think people don't believe.
It almost seems like the market is saturated, but what is your view on the saturation of the podcast movement, as some people call it? I heard the statistic about, there's 500 million YouTube channels, but only, was it, do you know what the
1.3 active podcasts, 1.3 million active
million?
podcasts.
So there's a lot, seemingly, if there's any room to grow, there's some. What do you think about it?
So, okay. I Actually, it's going on this week as we're talking. Podcast Movement is a great event space that gets all the podcast industry folks together. Podfest, I'll give a shout out to Podfest. It's another one that's based in Florida. Guy Raz was one of the head speakers, or excuse me,
Hmm.
Guy Raz was one of the panelists, and he sat in a room, and there's about 1,000 people in this room, and he said, "Look, I would rather have a room of 1,000 people like you guys sitting here that knows me, that listens to me, that enjoys what I have to say, and then if there is a call to action that you will follow through with, than having a million Twitter followers who may or may not listen to one episode every now and then."
Mm-hmm.
And that to me has motivated me to encourage everyone that's looking to do a podcast is do it for yourself first and foremost. And if you want to try to stand out and try to be the next Joe Rogan, you know what? I think in this day and age, you may need to niche and be really hyper focused on a area of topic
Mm-hmm.
to stand out. And then as you kind of get that following, then you can broaden out. You can still do a general type of podcast, but it's a long, harder fight uphill because there's so much out there. But you know what though? That's not necessarily true either. I mean, if you just got that magic pill and someone just likes you and then you can just blow up and go viral. So I don't know, put the effort in, be authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
That's a critical part. Be authentic because you know what? You're not going to last long. You'll have what we call pod fade, and you'll just stop podcasting at some point and get upset or disillusioned by podcasting, when the actuality is you didn't put the time in to plan it, to make sure that you're doing the right things for the right reasons with your podcast.
With having people understand about you, hoping that people are successful, knowing the saturation of the market, how do you stay productive? How do you keep going? I mean, you're with the different things you're doing, and I mean, maybe a lot of coffee, but the idea of, it is a very competitive market. There's, lots of clients that want to be the best or at least to be up there. And your job is to kind of meander through it all and help all these people. But at the end of the day, you're a person like everyone else and maybe not wanting to get up or, how do you stay productive?
Well, you know what's funny? Ever since started this business, I've never not wanted to get up in the morning, and I'm not a morning person. I'm a night owl. Like now I'm actually starting to hit my peak of like happiness, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
so you got to do what you love. You got to be authentic to who you are and what you are. Um yes, there are because we focus on so many branded podcasts, it's not quite the same as, underwater basket weaving. It is and not at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's very intentional. You got to know who your audience and who you're talking to. Okay. Like I said, you can launch a podcast and have only 100 listeners, but if those 100 actually buy from you, is that not
Mm-hmm.
better, right? Than a million that does nothing? So, and there's the other thing too is, there's a lot of folks that talk about monetization and podcasting and all that stuff. You can make money off podcasting. That's what I'm doing for a living now, right? There's going to be days you can get rejected. Absolutely, I've gotten rejected. Do I like it? No. In fact, I was actually going to post a video on LinkedIn saying how much I hate it. It hurts,
Yeah, it
you
does.
know, but you have to understand a no today doesn't mean no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It just means at this moment in time, they don't need you, want you, hear from you, whatever. That's fine. You're not going to please everyone. But you know what? I actually have gotten clients from, gosh, since we've launched our business in 2018. Um, this There's been quite a few that have called me back saying, "Hey, we're ready now. Let's talk."
Mm-hmm.
Even in the pandemic. In fact, the pandemic actually has been good to us.
Yeah.
We've done more work because of no one can go out and about.
Well, you said at the very beginning you're doing what you love and your dream. So that's a motivating factor in keeping you productive.
I gotta say one more thing.
Yeah.
Um, because I've been producing a lot of amazing podcasts and our clients are amazing, their guests are beyond amazing. It's crazy. I love listening to other people's podcasts and conversations because you learn so much from it. And I think selfishly, that's why I keep going too, because I'm getting a free master class from hearing all these other podcasters. I mean, for you, Brian, listen to your podcast and the interesting guests that you have.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Well, I was going to say
thank
you're a
you.
great example of that, of a great guest to listen to,
Thank you.
right? But you're right. There's a lot of value. I mean, and sometimes with all of the noise of all the different podcasts, unless you're sure of you know, what niche you're looking to learn about, all the podcasts bring most of the podcasts bring a lot of valuable information if you have an interest in what they're doing. So those guests that they bring on, or even, some people have the ability to just be their own solo host and bring out a lot of information. You're right. There is a lot of information to learn, and a lot of people have some very interesting guests.
You have. I've as actually I enjoy listening to you, so I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, the idea of work. So for you in your work, what is a tool that you could not do without? What is very valuable? What is the thing that keeps you most efficient in what you do day to day? And it could be like an internal thing, right? I spoke to someone yesterday and they said it's hard. But it's something that you need. It could be a sticky pad, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh my. Because anyone that knows me knows I'm extraordinarily not organized. So um honestly for me, and I'm working on and it's a struggle. I have had to use my calendar
Mm-hmm.
as as like even for my free flow thoughts, like I've been throwing stuff up there, reminders, like I know I will forget in 10 minutes about something, and so my calendar looks very disorganized, or it looks like, oh, you're overly booked. But oftentimes I just use it as a way to remind myself you need to stay on track.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give myself timers of, did you accomplish 2 tasks here, for this day or this
Yeah.
moment in time. So for me, if you're anything like me or you're super busy, the calendar is your best friend. And if color code it however you want to or whatever, that will keep you in line, especially if um you're an entrepreneur and you're kind of doing everything all at once
A
and
lot of
juggling
different
all these
things.
balls.
Syya Yasotornrat, what is your top tip for people getting into work? Thinking of my audience and people listening, getting into work, or as you and I have experienced, changing careers.
Hmm. Know who you are and find your center. However you want to find your center and what works for you, whether it's religion, meditation, exercise.
Hmm.
For me, sometimes it's a good glass of wine or a few more.
Yeah.
Um, it it's you really have to know who you are.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what career you're in or what you do to jump, especially in times of uncertainty. It will keep you level and stable. So that's my big advice.
You mentioned a couple of times a couple of hiatuses in doing things that you wanted to do. How do you find that rest, balance of work-life choices to separate yourself from your work?
So I didn't do work life balance. So when I was working, I worked. I rarely went on vacation. The worst stretch was a good 6 years without taking a vacation. So I was burnt out. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. 2018, I was breaking out into
Yeah.
hives for the number of stress that I had
Hmm.
to do another forecast call. The idea of a forecast call now, I still get like tingles. It was just it's a triggering thing emotionally for me.
What do you mean by
Um,
forecast call?
so in sales, you needed to give
Hmm.
report on the status of
Sorry,
your deals.
is this giving you highs by
Hold
speaking
on,
about? No,
hold on, let me drink
see
some
ya,
water.
see ya. Let's work it out now. Okay, we'll finally get it over with, and it's
You are
behind you.
trying you are trying to make me cry. I
No,
knew it.
I am not. I promise you. But let's work it out now. No more
Okay.
hives. So
Okay, no hives.
explain to me what it is. We'll work through the waves, and we'll smooth it all out.
All right, ready. So in sales, you need to have touch points with your management team. So the management can report to their management on the status of opportunities, projects,
Where are
deals,
you in this
etc.
process? You're the
Yes.
management, or you're the salesman going to touch upon the manager?
I managed an account.
Okay.
So I was a tipping point or spearhead
Mm-hmm.
for sales. I
Yeah.
still functioned in a sales capacity, but I did not manage anyone, but I did manage an account.
Yeah.
So I had a team that I still had to, I don't want to call manage because they were all peers,
Yeah.
but let's just say uh, I needed
Collaborate
them
with.
very heavy collaboration, and I needed things without the management title. So you can imagine how fun that is.
You
Uh,
have no power, but you need a lot.
yeah. So you really have to learn how to share value with people in order for them to give you their time and information. So yeah, I had to do a lot of reports back on different divisions at at HP, and that was stressful because there'd be times I had no information to give, and so therefore it reflected poorly on me if I didn't know the status of one division over the other. So it was very stressful.
Well, you
So
learn how to share.
oh, I certainly learned how to share. I don't know about my colleagues. There's a
I
few
could
there
tell.
that if I saw them, I would flinch. No, I'm kidding. No, they
But
know
it
who they
wasn't so
are.
bad. It taught you a lot. It was a valuable lesson. You don't have to do that anymore,
No.
and you've worked through it.
Yes and no. I mean, I own my own business, so I still have
Yeah.
my own forecast calls with
Yes.
myself.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't use that term anymore, but I absolutely do the same techniques. I got trained into that. So yeah, what gave me hives for some odd reason as an entrepreneur, it doesn't give me the same reaction, but I'm using the same process.
Sia, what is something, I mean, thinking of your yogurt days, what is something you wish you would have known around that time that you could impart to others now that might help them along the way?
I think I mentioned it earlier. I didn't fully. I think I stated it earlier, which was I learned very quickly how selfish people can be, or inconsiderate, self-motivated people can be. Like I said, the way parents would just let their kids like literally take scoops of stuff and just chuck it across the room, and the parents would be like, "Oh, you're so cute, Billy." Um, and then with Disney showing me why you want to give them a good experience,
Yeah.
right? Whereas uh, being resentful towards that experience, right? You never know. Maybe that was that one time Billy was able to ever get out, right? So because I
Hmm.
don't know what path these people have
Yeah.
taken, knowing seeing that back then and knowing this now, I think I again would go back and find my center to understand, you know what, I can't control that kid's movements or other people's reactions, the team even at HP, whether they would
Yeah.
give me information or not. Sometimes if you can't control something, it's not your problem. And
Hmm.
that's the biggest thing I had to overcome for myself. So let
It's
go what I can't
valuable to
control.
learn. It's valuable to learn, but also we need reminders
Hmm.
because we're
Yes.
presented with those types of situations almost every day, whether with our own internal struggles or with other people presented to us where, okay, okay, I need patience, but understanding their shoes, their paths a little bit better, just whether it's just to get through it or to, people say empathy towards others and trying to help them out too.
So Brian, like, if I may ask you a question, because you're so chill, you are like calm as all get out. Have you always been this like steady in from a
Ask
personality?
ask my dear wife. No. No, I think I am in between those mountains, I've gotten in fights before. I've argued with people before. I've freaked out before. And I might do it today. But I mean, going back to your dream and what you love, I really enjoy doing what I'm doing here. And you're not going to see the worst of me here, trying to present the best of me here. But my hope is to draw out from other people I mean, I'm open to answering other people's questions and your questions about me. But the idea is to figure out about you and to show that. For me, I mean, sometimes I do lives like for myself, and I'll just say how much of an idiot I am. And I've made the biggest and the worst of mistakes, or, I could paint them even worse than just saying mistakes. Um, but the idea is that, I don't know, there's a grace that covers it. And if I could, as you said, you learn a lesson of needing patience. I know I need patience, but I tend to forget the other side of why I need patience with other people. And that's usually where I find myself struggling the most. Say with my dear wife and I, she and I would, say it openly that many times we don't get along, but it's one another not recognizing the other person's perspective, usually, or our children or something like that. But being here in South Korea, where I don't tend to get to talk to as many people as I would like to, just because of a language barrier, I really enjoy these times. So it's kind of like, oh, I get to talk to someone, and maybe that's why it seems so chill. Um, yeah,
No, I love it. Like I was just fascinated, like seeing that you're from. Is it? Are you from Nova Scotia?
I am absolutely from Nouvelle Écosse, Nova Scotia, Canada. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I was looking at your background and I was like, how does one end up going from Nova Scotia to, South Korea? So, but I think you got a teaching gig.
Well,
So,
it's I like how you're turning around on me, but I
no, I'm
my
just
no
curious.
no my mom um my mom just passed away in February from cancer, but she was working years ago when I was in high school, even before that, at a hotel motel in our hometown of Lower Sackville, and the owners were Korean. And I happened to, during my university time, met a couple who just happened to come from Japan. And they were like, oh, it was so awesome. We went and taught English for a year. Now they took a hiatus from university. And then they went and taught for a year. And then they came back. And I said, oh, that would be awesome, not knowing what I was going to do in life. And they said, oh, yeah, but don't go to Japan at that time. They said, go to Korea because the economy's better. And then because my mom knew the Korean people, they were introducing me to, as you and I were talking before we started about, where are you from? No, but where are you really from?
Yeah.
Uh, and they introduced me to kimchi and chopsticks and all these sorts of things. And when I finally decided to go, the owner of the motel said, go to this city. He knew someone here and he would kind of take me around, and he and I've been friends for 15 years now. um, and that's how I found myself coming here, only because I didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated from university. And then I married my dear wife and had two kids, and now now we're
That's
here.
awesome. I love it. I love it. Like I love what you're doing, and I love that you're bringing these stories to life. Like I said, if you can, we all have a story to tell. Maybe it's because we were talking about, I was doing my boyfriend's genealogy. I
Earlier
feel
before we
like,
started, yes, yes.
yes, before we started, yeah, I'm sorry. Um, you when you start looking at birth dates, death dates, birth dates, death dates. Every now and then you would see them showing up in a census. Over time, you just become a name on an Excel
Mhm.
spreadsheet. And
Mhm.
so I love the
The
stories.
stories.
And
The
I think that's
stories.
real. Exactly. Maybe that's why I got my degree in history. It was the right call for me. Um, because there's
Because
stories
everyone
to
has a
tell.
story, and I think that's great how you say that everyone has a story to tell, and it's right on. It's a great slogan. It's a truth that I think even in what we're talking about, learning patience and understanding that person's story. And I think many of you and I were speaking before this too, just many of the problems going on, a lot of the noise. If we really took a moment, regardless of someone's background or regardless of what they're doing, we would be much more gracious to these people, whoever they are. And, to me, to you, to me, to them or us. We would be much more gracious if we just took a moment rather than just say, I need patience, serenity now, bite my tongue, to really take a moment of the worst or the most different from the most different from this side of the aisle to the other, and just have a little understanding. I fail at it, but at least it's a goal to try to attain.
Oh, I get you on that. I can't. Oh, every day. I had mentioned this. I am from California. I now live in Texas. So you can imagine how schizophrenic my social media posts or my wall looks like in all the social media platforms. So, um, but the whole thing is this, and I think that's the critical part too of what keeps me motivated, what keeps me going. I have had people that I've encountered that I was like, wow, I don't even like you as a person. Like, I don't know if I could do business with you, right?
Yeah.
But you know what though? We're, like I said, we're all human. We all breathe. We all
Mhm.
eat. We all die. There's commonality in our experience in some capacity. I'd be hard pressed to think, even someone that you abhor, there wasn't something, one little iota of positivity, that there's something that you connect with in some level,
Yep.
some level.
Yep.
And
I
that's
agree.
where I think that's what keeps me, I think, also motivated every morning because, look, we get rejected in our business all the time, right? You get rejected in friendships, you get rejected in familial relationships.
Hmm.
You have to just stand up and get up and wipe it dust off and go, okay, let's go. I think it's when it gets abusive towards you, then maybe you need to bow out. But,
Hmm.
but life is meant to be picked up and move on and maybe pivot in another direction.
Sia, is there any mistakes that you have made, all jokes aside, that you've learned a valuable lesson from? Something that you've brought with you?
Oh,
You don't even
how
have to divulge. You don't have to divulge the mistake, but just
where do I start? I have like, I mean, I almost feel like I should do that, like scroll and be like, here, let's start reading,
here comes the history teacher. Boom.
or
Parchment.
or or like Santa Claus, like, oh, you're not getting nothing this year, kiddo. Like, let's start
Hear
January
ye, hear
1st.
ye. See you.
uh, you know, Mistakes are meant to be learned from.
Yeah.
I made a lot of mistakes and I'm still making mistakes.
Yeah.
And you can only take lessons from it.
Hmm.
If you consistently make the same mistakes over and over again, you really got to do some soul searching. And that's easier said than done. Okay, look, people, I'm drinking water right now, and I've mentioned it, but you know what? There's been a few times I had one glass of wine too many. I'm getting to the point in my life where my liver maybe not recovering as fast as it used to be. But you know what? I enjoyed it at the time. It's like, no, but there's what's that thing? Repercussions.
Hmm.
There's
Consequences.
consequences for actions. You got to pick and choose a priority and what's valuable to learn from, right? And then when you do, gosh, what a life lesson that you've got. And it just makes you a better person. So if you lived a life without any mistakes, I feel like you haven't lived life, to be honest.
As I mentioned to you earlier, I was going to ask you about education and the value of education. Where do you hold that? Especially, I mean, not to beat the drum, but thinking of your dad,
Hmm.
right? Which I'm not sure what he did before you guys or he immigrated first, but the value of education, it doesn't have to be formal. Like,
No,
what you're doing now, unless you're taking some extra credit or courses on the side, it's all you learning hands-on experience, maybe talking to other people and getting some advice. But where do you value education and the importance therein?
So there's formal education and there's common sense and life education, right? Um, and I think both of them are a balance, right?
Hmm.
So there, let's be honest, there are some personality types that just don't function well in either or situation, right? Some folks need discipline, and you know what? I'd actually put military as part of education because I feel like for some individuals they need that hardcore. Hardcore discipline is military to me, right? I mean,
I
woo,
agree.
mm,
I
I
live
mean,
in South Korea where it's mandatory to do 2 years. And I know most of the guys hate it. Not all of them, like the Korean guys. But I'm like, you guys can implement. I mean, I know it'd be a big political woo-ha-ha to implement it in North America. But I'm like, there's some people that could use it. I mean, I could use a couple of years of military training, but there's some other people that could really use it.
you know, yes, but we have the freedom
It's
in the
true,
North
yes. At
America
least have the
to make our
option.
decision.
Like,
Yeah,
good suggestion.
look, just because you have the choice and options to do things doesn't mean you should take those options,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I think that also depends. Oh gosh, I think it boils down to critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And that to me means whether you're street smart or you're book smart or you're into submission military smart, there's critical thinking that your brain that you need to do that only you inside you can process that, right? That's the magic of being a human, right? Is do I have the ability to look at the set of facts presented to me and make a decision based on that? So education to me is nuanced in the context. It depends on your personality. It depends on what you're looking to do, right? I'm sorry. If you are going to be my lawyer and argue a case for me, but you Googled it, that's a problem. Okay. So yeah, there are some careers that you have to have education on. There's no two ways about it.
Hmm.
And there's others. I mean, did I really need a history degree? You know what? It showed me that I could research things on my own and find solutions. Or I see repetition, I see history repeating itself, for example. That's why the history degree was valuable for me in my career as a
Hmm.
salesperson. So it's how you apply it, it's not the paper per se, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So there, you don't always have to have a degree, but if you do, it also shows that you have discipline, that you finished something that you said you're going to do. And accountability is a big problem right now that maybe I shouldn't go down that path too hard, but
Well, that I'm thinking of the students here in Korea that in Korean society or Asian societies, or generally speaking, in Korea in particular, education is the foremost. It's top priority. If you're not the best, you might as well give up. And I find, and maybe it's a technology things, we're older and we didn't grow up with phones, computers as much. And I find a lot of these kids do lack that the street sense or even critical thinking skills. It's like if it's not in the book, and I find that Korea, while the education is good, right? I find it's better than many other like public programs. It doesn't connect the subjects. Like, why is this important? It just learn this, memorize it, put it on the test. And I find a lot of these kids, you know, there's garbage on the road and it's right beside a garbage can. The thought to pick it up, like, is
yeah.
not there. Some of those things in street smarts and critical thinking is lacking. I mean, and on the other side too, I know lots of people, lots of street smarts, but to find a library, it would be they would be hard pressed.
Yeah. Well, I maybe because I'm more of a independent individual, I really value the ability to solve your own problem.
Hmm.
And so I don't have children, but I do encourage my sister's kids. Like we'll talk about a situation and I'll
Hmm.
say, well, how would you
Yeah.
solve this? And I'm shocked at times. Like, honestly, for me, like, Google is like go to. If you don't know anything, just go to Google or go.go if you're security minded, right? Or something like that. But um, that's not the first place to go. That's what's the weird part to me. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like the Encyclopedia Britannica of modern age. Like, why wouldn't you
That's a
go?
good way to put it.
Sorry.
Someone needs
I,
a podcast, critical thinking situations on what you would do in these. Not bad, eh?
oh my gosh. Could you imagine if you made it like a quiz show type thing? How fun would that be?
What would you do? A, B, C, or D?
or
Or how would you do it?
just do a podcast and give them a situation and hear them talk through their logic and
Yeah.
like see what happens. How fun would that be? Although I can see being a little exploitive, like if someone fails, I guess, I don't know.
Call-in show. Tell us what you would do.
There we go. Or just pure audio, like, right? So
Sia, is there anything else that you'd like to add in thinking of the audience in an encouragement for people who maybe just quit their yoga job because they hated it? They're 6 years deep into a career that seems lovely on the outside, but in the background, it's really difficult, and they're not knowing what they want to do for university or for their career, or they find themselves in a time like this where their job is no longer and they need to switch careers, even if they're in their 50s. Do you have any
right.
words of encouragement?
Seriously, I just heard this today with one of my clients, and by the way, he's in his 30s, and there is something to be said about mentorship. And he doesn't know this, and I will never tell him right now because his ego will totally fly off the wall. But uh, seek people that have knowledge in areas that you lack, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that should be from a career perspective. When you network, over time, you build a network and you amass an amazing group of comrades, community members, whatever have you. But when you're starting out, you don't necessarily have that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my thing is reach out, even if you're 50 years old, reach out to all the people you've talked to over time. If you're starting out in your career, reach out to people that you respect and say, hey, look, here's what I'm thinking. Can I bounce things? And I hate that sounds cliche, bounce ideas off of you. But seriously,
Yeah.
can I get to know you? I want to learn about you. I want to learn about your history. Tell me about yourself. And from there, they'll talk to you. And make it a reciprocal relationship, right? Not just a take, take, take. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that happens. Um, but the biggest takeaway is try. 3 letters, but I love it. I love it to death. Just try. There is no harm. There's no shame in trying. In the in the course of the universe, no one will ever blame you for anything if you didn't just try once, whatever it might be. Not illicit drugs. Let's be clear. Whoever's out there, but
Just try everything from Syya Yasotornrat, right? Just like try. Okay, mom, I heard from the professional lady.
exactly. I'm gonna God. No, it's the last thing I need. But you know what though? But seriously, with you and your kids, like, would you ever fault them for just trying? Now, granted,
No.
you got to make educated decisions on that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't freaking, I'm gonna jump off a 100-foot bridge because I just want
Yeah.
to try it. No, I mean, you got to be
Yeah.
smart about
No,
it. But
absolutely.
but in your career, if you're looking for a second career, first career, 10th career, who cares? There's no harm nor foul because every experience will give you wisdom.
Syya Yasotornrat, where can people find you? How can they get in contact with you and connect?
I am always on LinkedIn. I'm heavily on LinkedIn just because of business and my focus. I'm not going to lie to you. I guess you could find me on Twitter as well. I am S. Yasso, Syya Yasotornrat on LinkedIn. Syya, yes, I said that. I'm sure I will pop up eventually. It's a unique enough name. Just do SYYA, and I'm sure you'll find me somewhere. But yeah, and always my podcasts, Innovation Calling, Afterglow, and How Soon Was Now podcast.
You are busy. I have, Syya, I have one final question for you, and that is, why do you work?
Because the alternative to me just doesn't even register. Life is meant to be lived, experience, have fun, fall on your face, get up again. That's why I work, because it's the journey. So do it. Be part of it. Make your own path.
And everyone has a story to tell,
Oh my goodness. I
and
think you're my better tagline than I am.
and you're living that story. Syya Yasotornrat, thank you kindly. You've been a pleasure, and I truly appreciate you taking the time here today.
Brian, thank you so much for having me on. And I totally look forward to hearing more of your guests. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye, Syya.